Okay, what's up, everyone? It's Andrew Bone here with BamaInsider.com. Hope you all are having a great week. I know it's a little different this week, not gearing up to go to Atlanta, but if Alabama can make a positive out of it, I think they certainly have this week with being on the recruiting trail. It's something that we've seen Nick Saban, even though he's been playing. He plays in these SEC championships. All the time. Obviously, except for this year, he's always kind of complained that you get behind the eight ball a little bit in terms of not being able to go out and recruit this entire week. So this time gets his wish. May not be obviously the wish is to play in the SEC championship, but you give Nick Saban an extra week on the recruiting trail. You never know what may happen. So I think it's been a great week for Alabama so far. Obviously, things have gone extremely well. What I want to talk about today is I'll go over some of the key guys that Alabama went and saw, whether that was Nick Saban or some of the assistant coaches. Kind of give you guys a kind of an update as to who the focus is on for the next few weeks. I guess less than a few weeks. Next 10 days or so, and then. We'll talk about some of the official visitors that are coming into Tuscaloosa this weekend. A big weekend for Alabama in that regard, with some of the key targets who are going to be on campus. And then I'll take a few questions. So let's get things going. Obviously, big week for Alabama, as I mentioned earlier, on the recruiting trail. I mean, they've seen so many top kids. I mean, you name one of their top overall targets, and Alabama's gone out and seen them. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Nick Saban has been coast to coast. I mean, he was, on the West Coast on Tuesday. He was in South Florida yesterday. I mean, he has been extremely busy, and we know how Nick Saban is in terms of, one of the best recruiting closers of all time. And I think it seems like he's got a little bit of fire under his belly. After the way the season kind of unfolded, and kind of the way it looks on the recruiting front. Alabama seems to be trailing schools like Georgia and Clemson and LSU, Ohio State for several top recruits. So I think Alabama pretty fired up, ready to kind of get after it, and they've done so this week. I saw a story the other day. Well, I don't think it wasn't a story. It was somebody asking me this question. It was, is Nick Saban visiting, some of these key guys early on because they're on the outside looking in and they just want to go ahead and get it done with. He'll visit his key targets next week, do that last in-home visit. It kind of works both ways. I think, there's been several instances throughout, the last 12, 13 years where I've seen Nick Saban go in home, the very first in-home visit, the number one target on their recruiting board. And it's kind of more so, hey, look, I'm here. This is my first stop. This is my second stop. You're an important piece. We want you in this class. So it's not just, let's go, the next week, two days before the end of the of the contact period. It can go either way. So I really wouldn't worry about who Nick Saban goes and sees first as opposed to last. He's going and seeing guys when he can, when it kind of works out for each person, because it's got to work out for the players just as much as the coaches. And they've got a lot of different kids, or excuse me, a lot of different coaches coming in, throughout the next couple of weeks to visit with them. So just because Nick Saban went and saw Darnell Washington on Tuesday doesn't mean that Alabama doesn't feel like it's got a good chance to get him. I kind of think the opposite of that. So in that regard, Darnell Washington, big visit for Alabama this week. Went in home with him on Tuesday, had a great visit. I think Alabama is very much in the picture now. I wasn't really saying that here recently just because it seemed like Alabama was way on the outside, that Georgia was heavy favorite for him. Don't really I'm not saying Georgia is not going to get him, but I don't think it's an open and shut case anymore. I think Alabama's in very, very strong contention with Georgia. I know that he's still looking at Tennessee, Miami, but I think he ends up choosing between Alabama and Georgia here in the next. He's going to wait a little while. He's going to wait until the Under Armour All America game on January the 2nd, but very possible that he could go ahead and sign next week, or excuse me, in 2 weeks, and then kind of keep that quiet until he announces his decision on January the 2nd. So definitely in the mix now for Darnell Washington. Another tight end that Saban went and saw earlier this week, J.J. Pigas, out of Oxford, Mississippi. With him, I think it's kind of what we've been talking about for a while. Just kind of waiting to see what happens with Darnell Washington, because Alabama does have a one tight end commitment in Caden Clark. Now, he did have an ACL, MCL, a tear, so he's not going to enroll early. He's going to wait until the spring to enroll. Now, I've heard different things. I've heard he's going to be offered a gray shirt. He may get a blue shirt. I've been told, from my context, that nothing's really going to change. He's just going to delay enrollment until delay enrollment in terms of coming in June rather than coming in January. So I don't think anything's really going to change there. Still just trying to add one more tight end to this class, and I think it will be Darnell Washington or J.J. Pigas. A lot depends on what happens with Darnell Washington and what he wants to do. So I thought things went extremely well with him this week. Another big visitor that Alabama went in home with, Phillip Webb. We've been talking about him for such a long time. He's been one of Alabama's top overall targets from the get go, and kind of seemed like Alabama was in the lead for a while. But then, after he took an official visit to LSU back in I think it was October, a lot of buzz started being generated towards the Tigers, as we've seen with several recruits this year. As of right now, not really want to make a prediction just yet. I'm probably off the train of he's 100% going to LSU. I think Alabama has made up some ground there. Nick Saban had an in-home visit with him. Charles Kelly met with him on what was it, Wednesday night, and things went really good. He canceled his official visit to Auburn this weekend. He's going to come in for an official visit to Alabama this weekend instead. So keep an eye on Phillip Webb, because I think things are getting very, very interesting with him. Alabama is expected to see one player tonight. That's Jace McClellan, Oklahoma commitment, big-time running back out of the state of Texas, been committed to Oklahoma for a long time. I think Coach Carl Scott's going out to see him play. There's a lot of buzz right now, a lot of talk that there's a good chance that he ends up flipping to Alabama. I'm probably leaning towards that way. Not ready to make a bold prediction just yet. That will come, next week after, right before signing day. But I think Alabama's certainly a strong contention for him at this time. Another kid they went and saw this week, Jordan Birch, 5-star defensive lineman. Jordan Birch is one of those guys that nobody really knows what he's going to do. Everybody's just been throwing out their own predictions. Everybody thinks they know who his top 3 are, his top 2 are. Nobody knows. I mean, that's just the bottom line. He doesn't talk to anyone. He doesn't let anything leak. We haven't really seen a coach come out and say much. We haven't seen his family come out and say much. He just keeps everything extremely quiet. There's only a few of those guys each year that you just don't know what's going to happen with them. Of course, we all thought we knew what was going to happen with Eric Gilbert last month, and everybody was wrong on that. And this is one of those situations where nobody just knows. Nobody has a clue. But I think Alabama is very much involved with him still. Charles Kelly, Alabama assistant coach, went and saw him play basketball the other night. I think things went really well there. And, not ready, like I said, not ready to make a prediction on what he's going to do. I think anybody that puts out, hey, these are the schools that he's going to end up choosing between, whether it's 2 or 3 schools, I think everyone's just making up who they think in their head are the leaders. So I just don't know what he's going to do. I don't think anybody, like I said, I don't think anybody does. Kind of one of those wild cards that, anything can happen with them. But I do think that Alabama has really made up some ground with him here recently. And, we'll see what happens. I definitely think that Alabama's in it with him. And, he's going to make that decision, I think, on December the 19th. I think he's going to wait until that Friday during the early signing period to announce that decision. All right, who else have they seen this week? Arian Smith, four-star wide receiver out of Lakeland High School in Florida. Another big-time target for Alabama. Crimson Tide trying to sign at least one more wide receiver. And we've talked about so many guys throughout the process. Alabama has three wide receiver commitments, but there's three guys that they've been heavily recruiting, that they've been heavily involved in, and that's Kashawn Booty out of Louisiana, who's committed to LSU. Has already taken an official to Alabama. You got Rakeem Jarrett, the five-star wide receiver out of Washington, D.C., also an LSU commitment. And then Arian Smith, one of the fastest overall players in the country, who is looking like it's going to end up being between Alabama and Georgia in the end of his recruitment. So, Alabama really wants to add at least one of those guys. I think it's kind of first come, first serve. If Arian Smith wants to commit, if one of those LSU commitments wants to flip, Alabama's going to take any of those guys. Not sure which one Alabama's going to get. I probably lean more towards Kashawn Booty sticking with LSU just because he's an LSU commitment in the state of Louisiana. It's kind of hard to get those guys to flip. But I think a lot of things, may change if we see Joe Brady, Alabama's LSU's passing game coordinator, if he potentially takes another job elsewhere. That could really open up the door for Booty, could open up the door for Rakeem Jarrett. Of course, we don't know what's going to happen, and we may not know until after the early signing period. A lot of these coaches tend to stay on. So a lot of them tend not to say anything about what they may end up doing until that early signing period or signing day is over with. But big visit, like I said, a big week of visits for Alabama. Like I said, I think things are very positive right now. Nick Saban getting an extra week on the recruiting trail. We saw Tino Sinceri post a tweet the other day that said TikTok. I can't remember the exact words, but something about unexpected big things. I think that he is talking about a recruit. A lot of people have tried to, I guess, decipher that tweet and think, okay, maybe it's about Tua returning. Maybe it's about this recruit or that recruit. Tino's an offensive guy. Must be an offensive target. Maybe it's his dad, somebody that Sal Sinceri was recruiting. Not sure exactly who it is, and I don't want to give anything away just yet, but I do think that it's definitely a big time recruit that nobody probably expected that was going to end up in Alabama's class. And, they've certainly visited some big name targets this week that, a lot of people probably thought they were going to end up elsewhere. You look at the list, Darnell Washington, everybody assumes going to Georgia. Phillip Webb, everyone assumes going to LSU. Jace McClellan, everybody, of course, I think people are starting to think that he's going to flip, but I think prior to this week, everyone thought he was going to stick with Oklahoma. So, Jordan Birch, another guy that nobody's just really unsure, but nobody really thinks he's going to end up at Alabama. Everybody thinks he's going to end up at Clemson, South Carolina, or Georgia, LSU. Alabama's kind of an afterthought when you talk to national or media guys regarding Jordan Birch's recruitment. So I think it's got to come out of that group. But that's all we can really say about that. Right now, let's see how things unfold. Things can change. Things change constantly in recruiting. I remember last year I posted this on our Bama Insider recruiting board yesterday about all the different guys that it was just a roller coaster ride all the way until whether it was the early signing period or National Signing Day in February last year with guys like Trey Sanders, Evan Neal, Henry Tolatola, Kobe Dean. I mean, there was just so many guys who one day it seemed like they were going to Alabama. The next day it was Georgia. One day it was Ole Miss. I mean, it was just ever changing, even on signing day. I mean, signing day was crazy because Trey Sanders I heard 5 different things on Trey Sanders within about a 3-hour time span. And luckily we predicted Alabama in the end. That's where he ended up, but it was a roller coaster ride up until then. And I think that's what's going to be the case with some of these guys. I mean, these high profile guys, I mean, they are getting so much attention, so much love from all these coaches. Nick Saban goes in home with a guy one day. They may end up loving it and saying, all right, this is my leader. This is where I'm going. The next day, they get another head coach in there and tells them everything they want to hear, promises them all this stuff. You're going to start from day one, blah, blah, blah. All right, that's where I want to go. Well, then you kind of sit down with your family, you discuss all your options, you lay everything out there on the table, whether that's a day before signing day, the day of signing day, whenever it may be. Then you really try to make your decision. So what we try to do is we try to keep everybody up to date. As soon as we hear something, this is what we're hearing, this is what we know that it might change, but this is everything that we're hearing at this time. So that's all I'm going to really say about that. There's a lot of big names out there still. Like I said, Alabama's tried to see all of them this week. There's some guys that are still going to wait until February to sign. So, like McKinley Jackson, 4-star defensive lineman from Mississippi, he plans on waiting until February to make that decision. So, there's some other guys out there that are kind of like that as well. So, we're really just kind of talking about the guys that we expect to make a decision between now and not necessarily the early signing period, but between now and the All-American games, because we're going to see some kids make those decisions at the All-American games, like Darnell Washington, as I mentioned. So let me talk about the guys coming in for official visits this weekend. They got 7 of them. Most of them are Alabama commitments that are very solid. Jamarian Latham, Christian Story, who won a state championship, was named the MVP of his state championship game last night. Got Malachi Moore coming in. Timothy Smith, a big visit for him. Rivals 100 defensive tackle out of Sebastian River. Now, he just took a visit to Florida this past weekend for the Florida State game. Now, it was an unofficial visit, so it was like his 6th or 7th visit to Gainesville this year. I mean, it's definitely something that Alabama is, I think, concerned about. And this weekend they're going to have an in-home, or they've already had an in-home. South Cincinnati visited him on Monday, but they are going to have him in Tuscaloosa this weekend. Try to kind of weather the storm there, make sure things are really good. I think that they can, really solidify things with him, because he's going to get back on campus this weekend, kind of get that, same feel that he had when he committed back during the summer. But big visit for him. Like I said, I know South Cincinnati went and saw him earlier this week. Nick Saban will do the in-home visit with Tim Smith next week. Another big visitor that we just learned about within the last 12 or so hours, Phillip Webb. And we kind of talked about him a minute ago. Canceled that official to Auburn this weekend. It's going to end up coming into Tuscaloosa. We'll see what happens. I think Alabama is still very much involved, very much in the mix with him. Don't think it's a cut and dry thing, all LSU for him. I think it's Alabama, LSU fighting it out for him. And I think Alabama could, potentially regain that lead that they may have once had this weekend. Another big visitor this weekend is one kid that's committed elsewhere, Javion Cohen, 4-star offensive lineman from Central Phoenix City High School here in Alabama. Been an Auburn commitment since the summer. He just got offered by Alabama about a month ago, and he was offered by Alabama back during the spring. But in terms of Alabama really pushing for him, giving him the green light, he was about, I think, maybe 260 pounds when Alabama offered him, and they said, "Hey, listen, we want you to get a little bit bigger. We want you to put on some weight. We'd love to see you up at 285, 290 pounds." We came back to Tuscaloosa, for the LSU game, 6'5", 295 pounds. Alabama, green light. He can commit if he wants to. He said after that visit, his commitment was 50-50 with Auburn and Alabama fighting for it. Nick Saban did an in-home with him. I say in-home. He went to the high school. We call that an in-home visit, but he went to the high school, met with him on Monday. and had a really good visit. Javion Cohen told me, he said it was the best visit I've ever had with a coach. Just incredible knowledge, learning everything that they would do for him at Alabama. So he's coming in this weekend for an official. Would not be surprised if we saw him potentially flip after this weekend. I do like Alabama's chances with him, but he does say he has said that he's plans on waiting until the early signing day to announce. Wouldn't surprise me, like I said, if we could potentially see an announcement this weekend, maybe even next week. So keep an eye on that. All right, so another guy that I wanted to talk about real quick is an Alabama commitment, Demoy Kennedy. There's been a lot of buzz about him. Just got rated a 5-star on Rivals.com. Number one player in the state of Alabama. Took an official visit to LSU this past weekend. A lot of buzz from Baton Rouge after that trip that LSU was on the verge of flipping his commitment, and that's kind of been a talk for the last couple of weeks that LSU was really coming on strong. Now, I do think LSU has come on strong and done a good job recruiting him, but things tend to shut down when Nick Saban goes in home with the commitments, and I think it has. I think he had an in-home visit with Demoy Kennedy yesterday, met with him, met with his family, met with the coaches. I think that storm has been weathered. I posted that on BamaInsider.com last night. I think he's sticking with Alabama. I don't see him flipping as people are worried about it. I think he ends up sticking with Alabama. So that's a very positive sign for Alabama. Speaking of his new ranking, we saw a lot of new rankings this week. The updated Rivals 250 came out. Alabama looking absolutely great on the updated list. And, people always tell me, well, of course Alabama looks great. You got the Bama bump factor. Every time a rankings update comes out, Alabama commitments go up in the rankings. Well, we've had a couple rankings updates where we haven't seen any of those Alabama commitments go up in the rankings. We've seen some come down too. We saw Quandarius Robinson come down. We saw Malachi Moore go down. We saw Thal Jones-Bell, really take a hit in their ranking. But we saw some positive things for Alabama commitments this week. We see 9 Alabama commitments in the Rivals 100, 3 5-stars. The 5 stars, Bryce Young, who is now the number 3 overall player in the country, Demoy Kennedy, and then Chris Braswell, who's been a 5-star throughout the entire process. And there's a few guys that are right there on the cusp. Drew Sanders, number 34 overall. Now I think he jumped up 30 or so spots. And he is, I think he is the highest 4-star player in the entire country. And he's playing in the All-Star, All-American game. I think once these Rivals guys see him a little bit more, good chance he ends up moving up. I've also heard Timothy Smith could get a really good bump in the rankings. Based on what they've seen on film, people want to see him in person a little bit more, and then decide. So I would not be surprised if we see Timothy Smith make a big bump. Let's see. A couple other guys that end up making a move into the Rivals 100 for the first time. Roydell Williams, Alabama commitment, running back commitment that's been very solid throughout the last year and a half. And Brian Branch. Brian Branch had an unbelievable senior season and ends up moving up pretty high. I think he's number 79 overall in the Rivals 100. We saw some new additions to the Rivals 250, Jamarian Latham, Jackson Bratton, Trayshawn Holden. So William Anderson make a significant jump in the Rivals 250. I think he was in the 200 range, and then now he's I think in the 150 range, and could end up Chad Simmons, who covers the state of Georgia, posted that he thinks that William Anderson has a good chance to move into the Rivals 100 by signing day. So we'll keep an eye on that. All right, let's look at some of these questions here, and then get out of here. All right. Do I think anyone will return for their senior season? Yes, I do. All right. Do I think Bryce Young will flip if Tua decides to come back? No, I do not. I've seen that question a lot lately. Bryce is as solid as it gets in terms of his commitment, no matter what happens. He is very, very solid. Who wins between LSU and Georgia? Got to go with LSU. I know Georgia's defense is very stout, but man, it's gonna be hard to slow down that LSU offense regardless. All right, just scrolling through here. Sorry, guys, I've got kind of answered a lot of these questions that have been fired in. Zach Evans is a silent commit to LSU. Well, probably. Alabama kind of hasn't been recruiting him much lately. I think the focus is on Jace McClellan. What position will Christian Story play at Alabama? I think he plays safety. I mean, obviously he broke the Alabama State high school record for career touchdowns. I think total yards as well. And he's an offensive guy, but I think he ends up playing safety in Tuscaloosa. 6'2". About 100. I think he's about 200 pounds now. I think there was some talk about maybe letting him work out at quarterback, but I think he's one of those guys that, even though he's broken all these records on the offensive side of the ball, he'll play whatever position the coaches want him to play, and he's very open to that. Let's see, you got another. Bryce Young is flipping. No, he's not flipping. Don't you worry. Ronald Williams. Somebody asked about Ronald Williams. Yes. So talked to Ronald Williams, four-star junior college defensive back the other day. Actually, yesterday, Coach Scott, Alabama DB's coach, is coming in to see him. I think Nick Saban is going to do the in-home with him next week. Like Alabama's chances with him, I think Alabama ends up getting his commitment. Who are some of the underrated recruits that Alabama is going for? You know, most of the guys are big names. I mean, that's just there's some guys that are kind of maybe waiting to see what happens with some of these guys. Alabama went and saw tight end Brandon Frazier in Texas the other day. He's a backup option. Jahmyr Gibbs. It's hard to say Jahmyr Gibbs is a backup option because he's such an elite player. He just got moved all the way up to number 111 in the Rivals 250 after a great senior season. Alabama's been recruiting him, but the problem with Alabama is they have two running back commitments in Roydell Williams and Kyle Edwards. Do you necessarily need a third running back in this class? Obviously, they're recruiting Jace McClellan, who's an elite guy, top level guy that I think that Alabama's been recruiting for a very long time, and they would take his commitment. But you got to, if he ends up not coming, I think they've got to really sit down and decide, do we need a third running back in this class? Let's see. Any thoughts on Sark leaving to be a head coach? I haven't heard anything like that. I hadn't heard if he's going to leave or not. Does he want to be a head coach? I think that's a no-brainer. I think he definitely would like to be a head coach again, but it'd have to be the right opportunity. I'd be. Somebody mentioned Colorado State. I just can't see him going to a program like that, a rebuild program. I think, and obviously any program he goes is going to be a rebuild, but I think it's going to have to be a top level type school for him to go to. Um, any thoughts on changes in the coaching staff coming? It's tough to say. I mean, obviously, I don't think anything's going to happen right now. You tend not to see anything happen like that until after signing day. So I think, that kind of news would not take place, for at least a couple of weeks. Any chance Alabama flips any of those LSU wide receiver commitments? Yeah, there's a chance. As I said earlier, I think there's a chance. With Kashawn Booty, with Raheem Jarrett, Kashawn Booty plans on waiting until February to sign, but as of right now, I think he ends up sticking with LSU. Raheem Jarrett, kind of a toss up. A lot will depend on when they plan on signing. Are they going to wait? Are they going to wait until February to sign? We'll just have to. We don't know yet. That's the bottom line. And I think there's a chance with Raheem, more of a chance with Raheem than Kashan. But like I said earlier, Joe Brady ends up leaving. I think that door opens up a little bit more for those guys. All right, guys, that's going to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed the session. You have any questions, come over to BamaInsider.com. Now is a great time to subscribe to the site because, all the recruiting news that goes on throughout the entire week. I mean, we stay on top of it with every single visit. Got a lot of interviews on the site with guys who have visited with the coaches already this week. We'll have a lot more throughout the weekend. Any insider scoop, we'll post on the board immediately. And like I said, if you have a question, come on there, ask me a question immediately, and I'll answer as quickly as possible. You don't have to wait a week to come see me on here and talk just kind of generics. You get real insider scoop on BamaInsider.com. So I hope you come subscribe on that site and join us over there. Great community, great team coverage, and hope to see you over there. So other than that, thank you for joining today, and we'll see you next time. Have a great weekend.